Okay. Hi, it's me, Bill Patton, and I'm with one of my heroes and now friend, Jack Brody. And I just wanted to start by saying, Jack, it's kind of fun when you become friends with your heroes. So, uh, and you have been very influential in my teaching, one of the very top influential people. I think I first saw you speak maybe in 1995, and then in 2000 I saw you speak at length, and you had the 8 board, and I was one of the ones who bought the blue 8 board,
Oh boy.
the blue plastic 8 board. And I just want to start with this quick story before I really introduce you, is that I took the blue 8 board and I took a college player that I've been working with, and we were both playing about 5-0 level tennis. And we got on the 8 board, and both of us started hitting 5 to 10 miles an hour faster immediately.
Huh.
Right. So Jack, how are you today? And tell us a little bit about you and the Brody system really quick.
Okay. Hey, thank you for the invitation to speak with you, and thanks for those nice words. It's always nice to hear. I know you get around a lot, so being called a hero by you means something. So thank you for that. Well,
Well, it
basically,
used to not mean anything. All right.
that's
So
true.
give us
That's
a
true.
very quick overview on what is Brody tennis.
Basically, it's a system that over the years I've sort of homogenized off of something that could have been difficult. I took a lot of courses up in your area, up in the Sacramento, San Francisco area, LA, by it was the Rudolf Steiner College, and there's 60 of them all over the world. And went to a bunch of week-long courses about this thing called projective geometry and spatial dynamics. So I could bore the hell out of you, no problem. But what I tried to do over the last 20 plus years is, like I said, make this thing accessible to people, make it simple. And it's basically a simple system, and it's not based on my observations of Roger Federer. I just see this. It's not about my eye or what I see, or even I'm a player. It's not about what I feel. It's literally about these formulas in mathematics that create this analog system we call a standing wave. They use them in the gym nowadays, right? They have those heavy ropes where they go like this,
Yeah.
and you see their body making this little figure eight and their arms rising in a figure eight, and then you see the rope moving in a sine wave, right? A figure eight.
Yeah. Awesome.
That is the exact same formulas that I use in my system. So I try to see every player through the eyes of my system, and so it's really not about what I see or what I perceive. It's about something much grander than any one tennis player playing.
No, that's great. Thank you. And thanks for keeping it brief, because that could go on for a while.
It sure
Anyway,
could.
so our the biggest question that we want to dig into is, where's the pain in not having a cohesive teaching system, one that's brought together by principles?
That's a great question. Um, That's a great question. And I think it's really relevant because I was, thinking back in the 60s and 70s, there were fundamentals. And back then, of course, they were very linear, right? Get your racket back, turn sideways, follow through. Some people said a loop, some people said straight back, but at least you had fundamentals. They might have been a little wrong, but everyone could agree on the fundamentals and then play off of that. The problem today is every couple of years you get a new buzzword, whether it's buggy whip, whether it's load and explode, racket head speed, and the poor students, right?
Ball recognition.
Yeah, ball recognition, find the ball. What does that even mean? But find the ball. Balance. They throw the word balance out like it's Pez candy. And there's cutie. There's more to it. There's so much to talk about when you talk about balance. But what I'm saying is, at least with what I've found, what I've just uncovered with this projective geometry, are some fundamentals that I think everyone can live with. And, like we've mentioned the 45-degree angle, right? We know the vertical axis, we know the horizontal. What bisects those two equally? The 45. And we know certain things are true. Gravity. We know gravity is real. So there are things we can all agree on. And like I said, I really believe that this system that I uncovered, and then I first noticed it with Agassi. How's this guy smaller than everybody else hitting everyone off the court? And then I noticed it in Rios. Rios, 5'7", knocking everyone off the court, out acing Safin, who was a foot taller than him. How is that possible? And I really believe that if everyone took their buzzwords or their tips, whatever you want, pointers, whatever you want to call it, but if they could fit into a system, and that's how I look at everyone's tips nowadays. I used to say tips are no good or they don't work, but some are very good. You know, I see tips, I go, well, that fits in the system. That fits in the fundamentals. So that's a good tip.
Yeah, let me break in there for a second. So
sure,
yeah, I mean, one of my things is people have all these tactics, but they don't fit into a strategy. So if you don't have a cohesive strategy, then your tactics might actually be fighting against one another. And then, you know, one thing that I took from Don Henson that I really loved was I
knew Don well.
Yeah, Don was
he was my tester when I applied for the U.S.
influence for me.
USP.
But one thing he said that really helped me tremendously was that if you know where your racket's going to end up, the path along the way is much more confident. And I think that that's one of the things that's so awesome about what I've learned from you is that sort of the knowing the way and what is the destination and what are the things that you're looking for, and then the path along the way can be fixed, so to speak. I mean, that's where you would come up with tips, as long as you're not. I always tell people this: everything's fine as long as you don't violate the figure eight.
So yeah, I would say that's about right. And if you're way ahead of the 45, you know you're going in the net or you're going wide, probably in the net or both. And you're absolutely right. And if you meet the ball concave as opposed to convex, these are all part of the principle. There's like 3 principles. So if you meet the ball with a concave fashion, right, where you're steering the head, you're going to have no power, right, because the ball is not going to sink into the strings nicely. So yeah, you're right. It is nice to have a system or fundamentals that you can rely on, and then all your tips fit into those very nicely. I guess my biggest thing, Bill, is people try to do it with a linear mentality. Even that word kinetic chain, it's seen as a linear mentality. And tennis is more like being a good surfer. You know what I mean? It's a nonlinear, it's an analog system. So to try and say things like, well, angular momentum, your racket just goes from here to here. That's even though that is an angle, it's still linear in thought.
Right.
So the idea of a sine wave rippling off your body, like that rope we talked about right in the beginning, that an analogous movement, right? That is what I'd like to sort of recruit people to believe, that this is not, tennis is not a linear thought process or system. It's not linear.
I think part of the reason why that happens is because people look at still pictures. And so they might see everything lined up for that one perfect moment, you know, and then they extrapolate that linear is the way. But what they really ought to do is study efficient motion, you know, and like, you know, where would we be without Leonardo da Vinci, right? And that Italian science of understanding the human form.
Sure. Sure.
Anyway. So let's tell you what, we're about halfway done. So let's get a little bit into the 45-degree angle, and then we'll touch on, you know, a couple other principles, and then we'll get into, you know, what's your current model for coaches and players to get connected with the program.
You know, one thing I'd like to touch on before, take me 2 seconds, of what you just said. People try to take a still picture and say, look at that. You know, to me, I always say the same thing to that person. I go, you know, it's like trying to take a picture of a flag, big flag, waving in the breeze. and try and take one snapshot and say, prove anything. You have to know the entire motion and how it works and why it works and the wind hitting both sides of the sail of the flag. And you have to understand it in its entirety. So taking a picture, any point of a moving flag really doesn't do you much good. So that's always the analogy I use.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay, well, basically you have three and a half principles in my system, and it's the same for, it's the same. Yeah, I have a half one now.
Principle.
You'll be the first one to know there's a half a principle. So first you got the 45-degree angle, the optimal contact point. If you watch the pros, pretty much every shot they hit is lined up at the 45. And if they miss, they're not lined up at the 45. They're either facing the net or they're too closed, or most of the club players are too closed, so they just arm it. But the pros, when they miss, they're almost always too early, not too late. That's the 45. And also the nice thing about the 45 is not only is it the optimal contact point, but it's the best disguise. It's the best disguise for a shot, right? At the 45-degree angle, I can go down the line just by turning my hand, and I can stay cross court by leaving it. So with the smallest of changes, you can change the direction of the ball. And nowadays, everyone hits a good ball on the Pro Tour. So being able to disguise is huge. And then I guess the other big thing with the 45 is it's the optimal viewing point, right? When I want to shoot a bow and arrow, all right, or a gun or any kind of a weapon, you always turn your body to the 45. So one eye is closer to the target than the other, and then they triangulate, and that makes you a predator rather than a prey, right? A monkey, a mouse, or a deer. Yeah. Their eyes go straight, or they go out a little, and they're prey. It's the same. You have much better depth perception with the 45.
Yeah, it's funny because I guess I never thought about it, but one of the great things, because I've got the book Visual Training for Tennis, but see, it's a negative to let that ball become flush with your body, because then that last flight of it going across your eyes is going to create some problems. So absolutely, meeting the ball out in front is more visually sound for sure.
Well, at that 45, you're more fearless, right? When you're facing the net, it's very fearful. When you turn sideways, you really only see out of one eye. So even your whole attitude towards the hit is so different than when you're at the 45. You are razor sharp, and you are Hawkeye. You're ready to knock it down.
Okay,
so that 45 is big. So
5 minutes.
Right. So you got the 45. And you can see it in science, right? Whether it's a microscope or whatever, everything's angled at the 45. So then the second is your engine, right? Your figure eight. People talk about this loading up, and I really don't like that tip because it implies stopping. And the great players, if you watch them very carefully, maybe their shoulders might stop for a fraction, but their hips, their core never stops. Right as they're in, they're coming around the corner and they're out, kind of like a car in a race. You know how it hits the bank and it's going into the turn. As soon as it's going into the turn, it's coming out of the turn, right? So It's kind of the same with tennis. So that figure eight of the hips is a very important thing. It doesn't have to be symmetrical necessarily, but it has to be, it can be wide in the beginning and small and tight and then wide again. Yeah. Or it can be perfect like Federer. That's one of the reasons he looks so graceful. His figure eight is pretty darn equal, like Agassi's was pretty equal. So that's the second part. And then what does this figure eight do?
I want to add one small thing, and that is what I see is I call the still moment, where they are relatively stationary.
That's
right?
good.
Because they're transitioning out of moving to one spot to make the shot, so then they're going to be able to move to the next thing. But they're almost completely still for a moment.
Correct.
On balance.
Correct.
But not stopped.
Right. But the word load up is misleading. And I guess the other thing about the figure eight, and I want to get back to what I said earlier, it's not about me. Think about the figure eight. Isn't there something called string theory? That's a figure eight. I mean, that basically is all of life, right? The string theory. And if you think about the figure eight, you have negative and positive current, right? Electricity doesn't even work unless you have a figure eight, unless you have both negative and positive current, right? That's what makes electricity useful. So once again, I don't invent the figure eight. It's just there. And It's been there for 100 forever. It's been there forever. I just decided that this formula of the standing wave, which includes a figure eight, you can see it in the great players. And then finally, with this lineup of the 45 and this figure eight motor, what does it do to the arm? Well, if you leave your arm fairly relaxed in front of you, it turns a straight line into, as we said in the beginning, right? Your hand moves in this figure eight very nicely, and the rope makes a sine wave. Well, I didn't invent that either. It's just a sine wave coming off the figure eight. So it's the same thing with tennis. You see how when Djokovic or Federer and Nadal go into the stroke, you see their head doesn't rush back like that. It goes back slowly. Federer is the slowest mover. He's like the Tiger Woods of tennis, right? I mean, he has this big stroke, but nobody knows where it came from. And it's because he's so quiet in the beginning, because his coil is forming, his arm is becoming concave. And then as he continues with his figure eight, it morphs into this idea of convex, which I never knew as a player. I was always trying to control my racket head at contact. That's the kiss of death. If you want to be a big hitter, you've got to let the racket go convex and let the head lay back. But then to say the words like drag, okay, that's a good tip, but drag is represented by this complexity. Well, so it fits in the formula. So I don't go crazy when people say drag or lag. I go, okay, that's right. But it's better if you give the student a real education and say, well, that lag comes from going from concave to convex. So
well, it's the difference between, do you want to focus on the cause or the effect? So, you know, an overemphasis on lag is actually going to take you out of the flow of the shot. So it's something that happens.
It could, but if you do it right, it won't. So it's one of those tips that I don't go bananas over, because it's not wrong. It's not wrong. And then let me give you the 3.5 fundamental, because there's only 3.5. And I've realized this lately, playing myself a little bit less than I usually do. I play indoors now, and I play once or twice a week, and I'm still hitting fine. But I noticed on my serve that when I try to get power, I pull it out of the 45 with my left hip a little bit, and it's causing me not to get a nice press on the ball. What I realize is there's this 3.5 principle, which is retraction, which is also, by the way, in the formula. When I look into it, retraction is part of this formula of the standing wave. So you don't want to do your hips in a figure eight and then continue to roll, or else you start to, as they say, pull off the ball, right? You want to retract. So as your hips come around the corner in this figure eight and your racket goes out to the hit, they retract in towards the next figure eight. And then what takes over? The shoulders. That's why everyone sees the wild shoulder motion and they think, oh, the shoulders, it's all about the shoulders, but that's still the tail wagging the dog. Remember, the shoulders follow the hips, follow the hips, follow the hips. Then the hips retract. Then the shoulders take over. So it's a real misunderstanding in tennis.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to wrap this up. Thank you for that, Jack.
Sure.
And I'm excited to give people an opportunity to learn from you directly, because I try to stay out of the stroking game. There's so much out there, and what you've done is so iconic. I don't suppose to want to try to rip you off and repackage your stuff.
That's nice of you.
Why would I do that?
That's nice of you.
Right? So anyway, down below this video that you're watching right now, I'm going to be inserting an affiliate link. But why don't you talk a little bit about the affiliate program?
That's great. I'm happy to have you in our situation. I really am. And we've gotten a bunch of members. We've only been open 3+ weeks, not even a month yet. And I couldn't be happier. We really got a great response. That's all I can say about that. I'm very happy. But you and me both. Something struck me when I was creating this site, right? I wanted to have a lot of value for the members, and I wanted to have a lot of value for the pros. And I racked my brains out before I even did this site for months, trying to find the right people to do it. And I think I did. B, what can I do? What can I do to give more value? Where people just go, this is just too much. And I just,
Mm-hmm.
so for the members, I tried to make it like a Netflix for tennis players, really, where you
Mm-hmm.
could go look at total instruction. You could teach yourself how to play. You could help your son or daughter or brother or sister. You could, be a mini coach, I guess. That's number one, lots of value. Number two, I wanted it to be entertaining, right? Because you can watch documentaries on Netflix, but you can also watch, Game of Thrones. You can watch things that are just purely entertaining. So I put the podcasts on there. And
Mm-hmm.
then sort of a hybrid of entertainment and lessons, instruction, where I did the live lessons every week. I put up another live lesson of a virtual lesson or even an encore lesson that I have with someone where we get into it. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's tough love.
Sometimes that's the best because then you realize,
Thanks.
okay, I mean, now, and that points to something that I really dislike about going to conferences where a coach brings with them someone that they've been working with for years. And then they like, look how easy it is, right? Because they have this fully developed player who's, been with them for years and years and years. And they're like, see how easy this is? But they don't show
No
the
struggle.
walking the
The
tightrope
struggle.
without a
Yeah.
net of meeting someone for the first time and struggling.
Yeah.
So when I go to a conference, I like to have people I've never met and
Me
teach them
too.
for the first time
Me
because
too.
then that's where you see how it really
That's
works.
where the
So
rubber meets the road. I agree. I do that. I
exactly.
did something with Cara Sosa over in Palos Verdes a couple years ago, and I do it sometimes with John Crawford over in Alabama, and some other places where I'll go in and say, okay, 5 minutes. That's all you get. 5 minutes. And I watch him for 5 minutes hit with somebody. I go, here's the biggest impact on your game. Just do this. And this is all within 5 minutes. And we video the whole
Yeah.
thing. That's it. And I go through about 35, 40 people in one day. That's really crazy, but I like doing that. It's fun. Okay, let me get to the rest of it, which is why I know you were leading on to. So yeah, so I wanted it to be a lot of value for members. But then I got into the pro thing, and I'm like, what can I do? What is not done for pros? And then I
Mm-hmm.
think of my friends. Ben Press, 92 years old, had passed away, and he's still on the court teaching his last week on the earth. And I'm like, Jesus. Vic Braden, great guy, died penniless. Great guy, great teacher well, not great, great personality for tennis. Let's put it that way. I liked him. I was a kid when he was on TV all the time.
Yeah.
And it's very tough for tennis players. And I thought, what can I do? What can I do for a tennis pro? That's really what it was. We have no IRA. We have no, retirement plan at all. US, all the organizations, they don't give you a retirement plan. They want their, they want their dues, and they want, you to have your insurance, and that's it. So I thought, what can I do? And then my web people said, well, you could do the subscription plan where you go for, really big volume, very inexpensive plan, right? $14.95 a month for, like I said, Netflix, umpteen videos, right? But the pros, what I do with them is I have this affiliate code. And with the affiliate code, all you have to do is just tell your clients or post it on Facebook or do a little email blast to your members. Hey, I'm part of this site. I love it. This is what I teach you all day long, the 45. Why don't you check it out? And then they put their affiliate code on there. And every time someone hits their affiliate code, it goes to my site, goes to the buy page, my site with a little explanation of who we are and what we do. But if they continue on and purchase at any point in the next 90 days, because the cookies are once you click that button, you're carrying that coach's cookies, so to speak.
Mm.
And so anytime that they decide to join, out of that $15, approximately, $5 goes to the pro every month. So let's say you have 400 people in your club and 100 people decide, okay, I like this. So just from one blast, you could get $500 a month passive income every month until people, if they drop off, they drop off. But I really try to keep adding, me, I add video all the time. I have so many players. Just yesterday, I must have gotten at least 7 players send me videos. Jack, check this out. Can you help me? How's it look? I'm going to Africa. I'm going to Mexico. I'm going to play tournaments. So I have tons of videos. So I'm not going to stop posting till I croak. And then hopefully one of you, hopefully my pros will take over and continue. But that's what I do with the affiliate program, is give pros a way to actually make money when they're not on
Yeah.
the court, because that's so
Awesome.
difficult. If it rains for 2 weeks in SoCal, nobody makes money.
Right.
Nobody makes
Right.
money. So that's
Yeah.
the
And
whole idea of
yeah,
the affiliate program.
it's a great thing to do. And so I'll be getting my affiliate code shortly. And then that'll be in the description of this video within
Great.
the next few days. So, hey, you tennis pros, don't go directly to Jack and leave me out of the equation. Come on now. Who's your
That's right.
buddy?
You deserve it. You put in the effort.
Who's your buddy? Who's your
That's
pal? What do you
that's
need?
right.
The
You always
answer,
put in the effort. I will give you. You sure do. I'll tell you that. Hardest
yeah.
working man in America.
I was gonna go with the famous lines from Stripes. Who's your buddy? Who's your pal? You need the Aunt Jemima treatment. So
I just want to be the. I just want to be the big toe. That's all I want to be. Is the big toe.
That's awesome. All right. Well, hey, Jack, thanks so much for your time, and
My pleasure.
thank you for your service to the game. And
You too, Bill. Always nice talking with you. You're an easy man to chat with, and I enjoy our conversations, whether they're recorded or not.
Awesome. All right. Take good care, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Cheers.
And look out for that affiliate link, because I think you're going to like what you see. Take good care.